I pulled into Brooke's driveway 15 minutes early, balancing the tres leches cake on the passenger seat like it was something alive. It was her 39th birthday. I'd ordered it from the little bakery she loved as a kid, the one with the sugar roses that always melted on her fingers. I even brought candles, sunflower-shaped ones, because she used to call them little suns. I told myself it would make her smile, the way she used to when she'd run down the hall shouting, "Mom, look!" I knocked on the door, already rehearsing the words. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." But when she opened it, the only thing on her face was irritation, like I was the neighbor selling magazines, not the mother who'd driven across town with a cake and a heart full of nerves. "Oh, it's you," she said. "Not Mom, not even a hello. Just that flat sound that can slice through bone if it's coming from your own child." "Happy birthday, my love," I managed, lifting the box like an offering. "Your favorite tres leches with strawberries, remember?" She sighed, the kind of long, theatrical breath you take before doing a chore you hate. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, stepping aside without meeting my eyes. Inside, the house smelled like eucalyptus candles and expensive silence. Every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine spread cold and perfect. I placed the cake on the kitchen island right beside a bouquet of white lilies that probably cost more than my groceries for the week. She folded her arms. "You can't keep showing up like this," she started. "The kids have routines, and you just drop in. It messes things up." I blinked, confused. "I thought you'd want me here on your birthday." She gave a small laugh, sharp, like glass hitting tile. "Honestly, if you really want to help, stop existing in my schedule." That sentence landed like a car crash you can't brace for. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. But her tone was steady, almost clinical, as if she were crossing an item off a list. My mouth went dry. "Brooke, She cut me off. "Mom, it's not that I don't appreciate you. It's just, I need space. You call too much. You drop off groceries I didn't ask for. You show up at my house, it's smothering." I looked down at the cake. The candles had started to lean in the heat, little suns drooping over their wicks. "I just wanted to celebrate you," I whispered. "Well," she said, glancing at her watch, "I have people coming over soon, so..." That's when I felt the tremor start in my hands. Not anger, more like disbelief wrapped in exhaustion. I'd spent a lifetime earning her comfort, thinking every favor built a bridge. Turns out, I was paving a road she couldn't wait to drive away on. "I'll go," I said quietly. She nodded once, relieved. "Thanks for understanding." I picked up the cake. It suddenly felt heavier than it should have. My reflection in the glossy chocolate looked like a stranger, someone older, smaller, erased. At the door, I tried one last time. "You know, Brooke, I used to think the sound of you calling me Mom was the best music in the world." She didn't answer. She was already checking her phone. Outside, the wind chimes on her porch clinked against each other, sweet and tone-deaf. The late afternoon sun hit the metal keychain in my hand, the one I'd given her years ago, a little sunflower that said, "Home is where your mother is." I turned it over once, felt the cool edges bite into my palm, and whispered, mostly to myself. She didn't slam the door. She just erased me from inside it. The chimes kept ringing as I walked back to the car, the cake box trembling slightly in my hands. I didn't know it yet, but that sound, the tiny collision of wind and metal, would be the last echo of the mother I used to be. That night, I couldn't bring myself to eat. The cake sat on my counter, untouched, its frosting cracked from the drive. I watched the candles slump and thought, 40 years of being a mom, and I still don't know how to stop trying. I made tea but let it go cold. The apartment was too quiet, like even the walls were holding their breath. I kept hearing Brooke's voice calm, detached, surgical. "You call too much." It's smothering. Every sentence trimmed down to a verdict. After a while, I pulled out the old shoebox from under my bed. Inside were receipts and notes, little artifacts from every time I'd tried to make her life easier. Rent checks from her first apartment, the invoice from the wedding venue I paid for, a photo of her holding the keys to her house, smiling like the world had finally turned her way. I used to keep that box as proof of pride. That night, it looked more like evidence in a case I hadn't realized I was losing. I started adding things up, maybe just to keep from crying. The down payment on her house, $80,000. Wedding costs, $25,000. The car she borrowed and never returned, another $12,000. Tuition, furniture, medical bills. Each line another small surrender dressed as love. By the time I hit the total $186,300, I laughed out loud. It wasn't bitter, not yet, just disbelief. Do you know what's funny? When you start putting a price tag on love, you don't realize it's not the money you're mourning, it's the years, the hours of double shifts, the birthdays you worked through, the friends you stopped seeing because you were too busy helping. Every zero on that paper was a piece of me I'd traded away. At midnight, I opened the photo album on my phone. There she was at 7, missing her front teeth, icing smeared on her cheeks. At 21, in her graduation gown, calling me her hero. At 30, holding her newborn twins and telling me she couldn't have done it without me. And now 39, shutting the door in my face like I was a burden. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe I trained her to believe love meant never hearing the word no. I made a note in my journal that night. Giving is not love if it erases you. Hand her. It didn't sound profound then, just a desperate sentence written to stop the ache. Around 2 in the morning, I finally lay down. Sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying the look on her face, cold, efficient. Like cutting me off was a task to check off before her party guests arrived. And then, out of nowhere, I thought of something she said when she was a teenager. We'd fought over curfew, and she'd shouted, "You just want to control me!" I'd laughed then, brushed it off. But maybe she'd been storing that story ever since, rewriting every sacrifice as manipulation. By dawn, the tears had stopped. In their place, a different feeling was creeping in, not rage, not even grief. Something steadier, like a pulse finding its rhythm again after being strangled. I brewed a fresh cup of coffee and stared at the sunlight hitting the empty cake box. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep measuring my worth in what I gave away. I picked up the pen again and wrote another line beneath the first. Starting today, I stopped being the safety net. The words looked strange in my handwriting, firm, almost foreign. But they stayed there, black ink on white paper, proof that something in me was waking up. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for thinking of myself. 2 days later, I was back at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold again, staring at my phone. 3 messages from Brooke blinked on the screen like tiny alarms. Need you Friday. Can you watch the kids? Oh, and don't forget your debit card, please. Chase needs to cover the utilities this week. No, hi. No, how are you? Just a list. It's strange how the people who drain you the most always manage to make it sound like you're the dependable one, the safe one, the one who won't say no. For a minute, I almost replied, of course. That old reflex, the caretaker in me, was ready to step up again. But then I looked at the blue binder I'd started 2 nights earlier. It was open on the counter, its first page labeled Financial History Personal Support to Brooke. Each receipt inside told a story. The car repair that was just temporary. The credit card I opened just in case. The extra mortgage payment to avoid late fees. And there, right under my own handwriting, were the words from my journal. Giving is not love if it erases you. I closed the binder and whispered, let's test that theory. At the local credit union, the air smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. I'd been a customer for 30 years. The tellers all knew me by name. Morning, Miss Marquez, one said. What brings you in? I smiled, trying to sound casual. Just updating a few things. Inside, my hands were trembling. It's amazing how something as simple as a signature can feel like rebellion. I asked to remove the joint sub-account Brooke used for rainy day, transfers the one she swore she never touched unless it was an emergency. The clerk nodded politely, clicked through screens, and said, all right, ma'am. That account will now be in your name only. I could have cried. Not out of sadness, out of relief. Next, I updated my verbal password, something no one had ever asked for before. Just in case, the clerk said. It protects you if someone calls pretending to be you. It's not now. I chose something simple, something that meant nothing to anyone but me. Sunflower. When it was done, I thanked her and stepped outside into the bright Santa Fe sun. For the first time in months, the light didn't feel harsh. It felt honest. That's when I saw him, Chase, standing by his truck in the parking lot. Hands in his pockets, sunglasses on, smile too smooth to be accidental. "Hey, Mom," he said, like the words still fit him somehow. "Funny running into you here." My stomach tightened. "I had some errands." "Yeah?" "Brooke mentioned you might help us out again. Things are a little tight. Family first, right?" He said her. He leaned against the truck like he owned the world, or at least the part of it I'd been paying for. Family first. I'd said that phrase 1,000 times over the years, but in that moment, it sounded different, more like a command than a value. I took a breath and smiled, a small, polite one. "Of course, family's important," I said. "That's why I'm learning to protect mine properly." He frowned a little, probably wondering what I meant. I didn't explain. I just wished him a good day and walked away. Back in the car, I sat for a long minute, watching him in the rearview mirror. My pulse was steady. The fear that used to live in my chest had quieted, replaced by something simpler, clarity. That afternoon, I tucked the updated documents into the blue binder. On the inside cover, I wrote a new note. "Every lock needs a key. Not everyone deserves one." The metal keychain on my purse caught the sunlight, the tiny sunflower glinting against the window. I held it in my hand until it left a small mark in my palm. And for the first time, the word family didn't sound like an obligation. It sounded like a boundary. That Friday, the phone rang just as I was finishing breakfast. Brooke's name flashed across the screen. For a moment, I almost didn't pick up, but old habits die slow, and mine always died last. "Hey, Mom," she started, voice smooth but sharp at the edges. "Listen, we're in a bit of a situation." Of course they were. They always were. "The mortgage is due Monday," she said quickly. "Chase's hours got cut again, and the twins need their field trip fees covered. It's just bad timing." I closed my eyes. Same words, different month. "Brooke," I said softly, "I told you I can't keep." She cut me off before I could finish. "Oh, come on, Mom. It's just temporary. You've helped before. You said we're family. Or does that not count anymore?" That last line wasn't accidental, it was crafted, designed to pierce the one place I'd never learned to armor: guilt. "I'm not saying no to you," I said, careful with my tone. "I'm saying no to the pattern. Havin' in Littlely Freen." There was a pause on the line, then a sigh heavy with disbelief. "Wow, so this is who you are now? After everything I've done for you?" I almost laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, sweetheart?" She scoffed, offended that I'd even ask. "You know what I mean. You raised me. That's your job." That word job hit me like a slap. Raising her had been my joy, my life, not a transaction. But in her mouth, it sounded like something I owed her indefinitely. "I think that job ended a long time ago," I said quietly. "You're unbelievable," she snapped. "Chase was right. You're just trying to control us through money." "Control?" I repeated. "Brooke, you've had control of my finances for years." "I'm just taking it back." There was silence again, longer this time, colder. Then the words that would change everything. "Maybe you shouldn't be making financial decisions anymore," she said slowly. "You're 72, Mom. You forget things. You get emotional. Maybe we should talk about a power of attorney or something before things get worse." I froze. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. That wasn't concern, it was strategy. A new tactic. "You think I need a guardian?" I asked, voice trembling but steady enough to carry through. "I think," she said, her tone syrup sweet, "we need to make sure you're protected. You've made a lot of impulsive choices lately." The audacity was surgical. She wasn't just taking my money anymore, she was preparing to take me. "Brooke," I said after a long pause, "I'm hanging up now." She sighed again, the sound of someone already spinning the narrative in her head. "Fine, but don't come crying when you lose everything because you refused help." I hung up first. The silence that followed was different from the usual ache. It was electric. I knew what she was doing. I'd seen it in my years working at the hospital, patients tricked into signing things, their accounts quietly drained, their signatures forged under the banner of protection. That night, I called my friend Ellen, a retired paralegal I'd met at church. I told her everything, every word, every tone, every implication. She didn't gasp or scold. She just said, "Get ahead of it. Paper over panic. Monday morning, go to the bank and the courthouse. Make it official before they make it convenient." So I did. I spent the weekend gathering every document I could find, bank statements, house deeds, old wills, the binder I'd started. I labeled every folder in blue ink. On Sunday night, I sat on the couch and whispered to the empty room, "You can't be erased if you're documented." When I closed my eyes, I could still hear Brooke's voice. "You're too emotional. You forget things." Maybe I did forget things sometimes, like birthdays, or where I left my glasses, but I wasn't forgetting this. Because this time, the call didn't end when I hung up. It stayed playing in my mind like a warning bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Monday morning, the sky was the color of cold steel. I woke up before dawn, heart pounding like I'd heard an alarm, but it wasn't sound that woke me, it was instinct, the kind that whispers, "Move now, before someone else does." I made coffee, black and bitter, the way I used to when I worked nights at the hospital. The blue binder sat on the kitchen counter, open like a compass. Its tabs were neat, color-coded finances, legal, health, communication. I had no training in law, but I'd spent decades documenting everything for patients. Now, I realized, that habit might save me. The courthouse in Santa Fe opened at 8. I was there by 7:45, binder in hand. The clerk, a young woman with kind eyes, glanced at my stack of forms. "Looks like you came prepared." "I'm done living on trust alone," I said with a small smile. By noon, I'd filed 2 notarized documents, a revocation of power of attorney just in case, and a new will and living directive, naming no family as executors. Everything went through my friend Ellen's law office now. I also requested a freeze authorization on any joint accounts that could be contested without my written consent. It sounds complicated, but honestly, it was mostly peace disguised as paperwork. Ellen called me that afternoon. "You just bought yourself safety," she said. "And if they try to question your capacity later, you've got a paper trail showing full clarity, timestamps, signatures, everything." "Good," I said quietly, "because Brooke's playing a new game." Ellen sighed. "Let me guess, doubt, guilt, and guardianship." "Exactly." That night, I went home and typed out something I called the family incident log. It wasn't fancy, just a dated list of every interaction with Brooke and Chase since the argument. Who said what tone they used, what requests were made, facts only. No emotion, no guesses, just receipts. Every entry began with the same 3 steps Ellen had taught me. Calm, collect, confirm. Calm. Don't respond immediately, even when they poke at your guilt. Collect. Record everything. Time, place, words. Confirm. Summarize in writing, even if just an email that says, "As discussed." It became my anchor. When panic rose, process answered. 2 days later, Brooke texted again. "Mom, you didn't pick up. I'm worried. Can we talk?" Worried. The word almost made me laugh. I took a deep breath and replied, "Happy to talk. Please email what you'd like to discuss." 5 minutes later, another text. "Email? Seriously? Since when are we this formal?" "Since now," I thought. That same afternoon, I called my credit union and requested dual authorization for any future account changes. The banker hesitated. "Ma'am, are you sure you want to restrict family access? It might complicate things." I smiled. That's the point. By the end of the week, I had digital backups of everything, scanned copies stored on a flash drive labeled Sunflower. One version in my safe, one with Ellen, and one uploaded to a secure cloud account under a new password Brooke didn't know. When I zipped the binder closed that night, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was still sad. God, yes, but not scared. Sadness is heavy. Fear is hollow. Once you fill the emptiness with clarity, fear has nowhere to echo. Before bed, I sat by the window, writing in my journal. Love needs witnesses. So does betrayal. I thought of all the mothers who never had proof who got called crazy or confused when they tried to explain what was being taken from them. Maybe I couldn't fix that for everyone, but I could start with myself. The next morning, as the sun rose, I made a new label for the spine of my binder. Boundaries, not revenge. And for the first time, the word didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise to myself. The day after I finished the binder, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes tired, but beneath that, there was something new, a steadiness. Like she'd finally decided she didn't owe the world her exhaustion. That same morning, Brooke showed up at my door. No call, no warning, just the sound of her car door slamming, sharp as thunder. My stomach tightened before my mind could catch up. When I opened the door, she smiled in that brittle, too sweet way that always meant trouble. "Hey, Mom," she said, holding a folder in her hands. "We need to talk, it's important." Those words again, "we need to talk." I stepped aside, motioning her in. She didn't even wait for an invitation. She walked straight to the kitchen table, laid the folder down, and started talking fast, like she'd rehearsed it. "So," she began, "Chase and I talked to a family advisor. He says you're making impulsive choices that could hurt everyone, like closing accounts and changing the will. We just want to protect you." "Protect me!" The phrase made my skin crawl. "What advisor?" I asked calmly. "Someone who works with families," she said, eyes darting away. "He said we should look into a joint management agreement, just temporary, until things settle down." I looked at the folder. Inside were printed forms, bank authorization papers, pre-filled with my name. My signature line was flagged with a yellow sticky note that said, "Sign here." She must have noticed the color drain from my face because she rushed to explain. "Mom, it's not what you think. It's just so we can help you with bills, so you don't have to stress." I took a slow breath. "Brooke," I said, "if you think I'm incapable of paying my own bills, then you're welcome to call my lawyer, but I'm not signing anything today." Her smile vanished. "Why are you being so defensive?" "I'm just trying to help." "That's not help," I said softly. "That's control dressed up as concern." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Wow, you really are paranoid. This is what Ellen's been putting in your head, isn't it? You think everyone's out to get you now?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, the woman who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared of thunderstorms, now standing in my kitchen, trying to quietly erase my autonomy. "You told me once," I said, "that I made you feel small. Maybe I did, without realizing it. But this is you trying to make me disappear." She flinched, just slightly. Then she grabbed the folder. "Fine," she said, voice shaking. "If you want to be alone, then be alone. But don't come begging when it all blows up." The door slammed so hard the frame rattled. For a long time I just stood there, hands trembling, heart racing. Then I sat at the table and stared at the imprint her folder had left on the wood. That was the moment, the mirror test, I called it later. When you stop asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and start asking, "Why am I still letting them?" I got up, washed my face, and said aloud to the empty kitchen, "No more saving people who call it control when you stop drowning with them." That evening, I wrote another entry in the binder. Boundary #5. I don't sign papers under pressure, ever. If it's urgent, it's manipulation. Then, just to make it real, I made a copy of that note and taped it inside my wallet right where my ID used to be when Brooke was my emergency contact. As I turned off the lights that night, I realized something else. I wasn't scared of being alone anymore. I was scared of forgetting who I was before they convinced me I was crazy for noticing. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Brooke again. Silence can be such a strange thing. It feels like peace at first, then starts to sound like a test. Every day that my phone stayed quiet, I wondered if the storm had passed or just gone underground. Then, one afternoon, Ellen called. Her voice had that deliberate calm she used when bad news was about to land. "Juliet," she said, "I got a call from the bank's compliance office. Someone's been trying to access your account records. They used your full name and date of birth." I felt a chill move through me. "Let me guess," I said softly. "Family advisor?" Ellen sighed. "That or someone claiming to be acting on your behalf." Luckily, the bank froze the request, but you might want to tighten security further. I'd also recommend doing a personal audit review every connection, every shared account, every authorized user. That night, I pulled out the blue binder and opened a fresh section labeled The Audit. It felt clinical, detached, just numbers and forms, but emotionally, it was like dissecting your own life. I started with the joint credit card. Canceled. The family phone plan still in my name, though Brooke and Chase hadn't paid their share in months. Canceled. The Costco membership. The insurance auto-pay that quietly included her SUV. Canceled, canceled, canceled. With each call, I wrote the date, time, and confirmation number. It wasn't anger guiding me anymore, it was documentation. The kind of calm that comes when you realize facts can't be gaslit. By midnight, the pile of canceled statements looked like victory. I poured myself a small glass of wine, the same kind I used to bring to family dinners. It tasted different now, dry, adult, earned. The next morning, I went to the police station to file an identity protection notice. The officer, a young man who couldn't have been older than Brooke's twins, listened carefully. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "People think these things only happen to strangers, but most cases start inside families." "Yeah," I said with a sad smile. "Family has all your passwords." When I got home, the voicemail light was blinking. Brooke's voice filled the room soft, tearful, the way she used to sound when she was grounded at 15. "Mom, please call me back. I think you're overreacting." I didn't mean for any of this to go so far. I played it twice, once with my heart, once with my head. The heart wanted to call her back. The head recognized the script. Instead, I opened my laptop and typed an email, short, factual, unemotional. "Brooke, any future communication should be in writing. Please direct all financial or legal inquiries to my attorney, Ellen Brooks. I wish you and your family well." I read it 3 times before pressing send. It felt like signing a peace treaty with myself. Later that week, Ellen stopped by for coffee. She flipped through my binder, nodding approvingly. "You're running this like a case file," she said. "Most people panic. You organized." "I used to think panic was love," I admitted. "If I fixed things fast enough, maybe it meant I cared enough." Ellen smiled gently. "Now you know love can move at the speed of clarity." Before she left, she handed me a small folder. "Here. Extra protection. It's a notarized declaration that you're of sound mind and managing your affairs independently. If anyone tries to question that again, you've got proof." After she left, I added the folder to the binder and labeled it Capacity Statement. That night, I sat on my balcony under the New Mexico stars, the binder beside me. A strange peace washed over me, not the fragile kind you get when people behave for a few days, but the solid kind that comes from receipts, signatures, and witnesses. I wrote one last note before bed. Truth doesn't shout, it documents. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't dream of arguments or apologies, just silence, the kind that finally meant safety. It was a Thursday morning when the first knock came. 3 short raps, sharp, official. Not the way friends knock. When I opened the door, a man in a navy blazer stood there, holding a clipboard. Behind him, a woman in a beige suit offered a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Marquez?" the man asked. "We're with Adult Protective Services. We received a report about possible cognitive decline and financial vulnerability." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Then I saw the form on his clipboard, and at the bottom, the name of the person who filed it. Brooke. The air left my lungs like I'd been punched. "Would you mind if we came in to talk?" the woman asked gently. Every instinct screamed no, but I remembered Ellen's words. Paper over panic. Calm, collect, confirm. So I nodded. "Of course," I said. "Please, have a seat." They asked polite but invasive questions, how I managed my finances, whether anyone helped me with decisions, if I'd recently traveled or made large withdrawals. Each question was a quiet accusation dressed in procedure. I answered clearly, calmly. "Yes, I manage my own accounts. No, I'm not being coerced. Yes, I did withdraw money because I'm the one who earned it." The woman smiled again, typing into her tablet. "We just have to verify that you're capable of informed consent regarding your assets." I almost laughed. Honey, I was a nurse for 40 years. I've had to explain informed consent to people who couldn't even spell it. When they finally left, I stood at the door for a long time, staring at their retreating car. I should have been furious, but what I felt was something colder, heavier, betrayal refined into proof. I called Ellen right away. "She actually filed a report?" Ellen said, voice tight. "She did," I replied. "Used my age as ammunition." "I'll handle it," Ellen said. "We'll contact the state office. Provide documentation. You've got timestamps, notarized statements, your medical records. She can't prove what isn't true." That night, I sat by the window with my journal open. The page stared back at me like an interrogation. "What do you write after your child accuses you of being unfit to live your own life?" I wrote just 2 sentences. They can question my mind, but not my memory. I remember who I raised and what I survived. The next morning, I walked to my doctor's office and requested a full cognitive assessment. The nurse looked confused. "Are you experiencing any issues, ma'am?" "No," I said. "I'm experiencing accusations." I passed every test with flying colors: recall, logic, attention. My doctor even chuckled. "You're sharper than half my staff," he said, signing the evaluation. When I handed the results to Ellen, she shook her head in disbelief. "You realize what this means? You've got legal evidence now. If she tries anything else power of attorney contested, well, this document ends it before it begins." For the first time, I smiled without forcing it. "So that's what peace looks like? Paper and ink?" "Paper and truth," she corrected. "They age better than people do." "Thanks, Dime." A week later, the state closed the investigation as unsubstantiated. Brooke received a formal notice that false reports could result in penalties. Ellen faxed me a copy. I read it 3 times, not out of pettiness but closure. I thought of calling Brooke, telling her I'd seen it, that I forgave her. But forgiveness, I realized, isn't always about contact. Sometimes it's just letting the silence testify. That evening, I added the notice to the blue binder, sliding it right after the section labeled "The Audit." I wrote in neat letters across the top, "Proof that I'm still here." Then I poured a cup of chamomile tea and sat on the balcony until the sun dropped behind the mountains. For the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar, not safety this time, not victory, freedom. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. A few weeks passed after the investigation closed, and for the first time in a long time, my days followed a rhythm that belonged to me. No calls demanding help, no guilt disguised as love. Just mornings, filled with quiet decisions, coffee, music, sunlight on the porch. I had almost started to believe the storm was over. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was David Brooke's husband. "Mrs. Marquez," he began softly, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to say something." "Every." His voice carried that tone. I recognized the sound of a man standing in the debris of his own choices. "Go ahead," I said, my tone steady but not cruel. "She told me everything," he continued, "about the report, about trying to access your accounts. I didn't know she'd gone that far, I swear. I thought she just wanted to talk some sense into you." I stayed silent, letting him twist in the space between apology and explanation. "I'm not calling to defend her," he added quickly. "I just want you to know I'm sorry. And the twins, they keep asking about you. They miss you." That last part, "they miss you," landed differently. The anger in me flickered, but it didn't disappear. It just softened around the edges. "David," I said quietly, "missing someone isn't the same as valuing them." He exhaled. "You're right. And maybe that's something they'll have to learn the hard way." After the call ended, I sat in silence for a while. It's strange how remorse, even from the wrong person, can stir a kind of mercy in you. But mercy doesn't mean reopening the door, it just means you've stopped standing guard with a weapon. That evening, Ellen came by with news. "Remember that mortgage cosigner situation?" she asked. "The bank finalized proceedings. Because of your legal standing, you're entitled to recover your initial payment and interest, roughly $168,000. I stared at her, stunned. "You're telling me I'm getting my money back?" "Every penny," she said, smiling. "It's poetic justice with compound interest." When the funds cleared the next week, I cried not out of greed, but out of something deeper. For years, I'd believed every dollar I gave away was gone forever, like little offerings burned on the altar of motherhood. Now, somehow, life had handed part of it back as if to say, "You were never wrong to love, only wrong to disappear while doing it." I celebrated in the simplest way I knew how. I drove to the next town over and bought a watercolor set. The expensive kind, the one I always told myself was too indulgent. I set it up by the window, dipped the brush in blue, and watched color bloom across paper like memory healing itself. That night, I found a message in my inbox. It was from an email address I didn't recognize, but the subject line stopped me cold. "Grandma, it's us." Inside were a few short sentences. "Mom said some things we don't understand, but Dad told us the truth. We just wanted to say we love you. We hope you're okay." There were 2 drawings attached, stick figures of me, holding flowers, smiling. I cried quietly, but not the kind of crying that drains you. It was the kind that rinses something clean. Later, I printed their message and tucked it into the blue binder, under a new section labeled Legacy. I wrote one line beneath it: "The future will remember who stood their ground with love." When I closed the binder, it felt lighter than it used to. Maybe because, for once, it wasn't just a record of what I'd lost, but proof of what I'd reclaimed. And as I turned off the lights that night, I realized something I wish I'd known years ago. Sometimes, the real inheritance isn't money or houses. It's the peace you leave behind when you finally stop apologizing for surviving. It's been almost a year since that awful knock on my door, the one that made me question my sanity, my strength, and my worth all at once. A year since Brooke told the world I couldn't think straight. But today, as I sip my coffee and look out over the desert, I know exactly who I am. I didn't move away or run off to some foreign country like I once dreamed. I stayed here in Santa Fe, in the same small house with the same creaky floors, but everything inside me changed. The fear is gone. The waiting is gone. I live by a different rhythm now. Document, breathe, rest. I started teaching watercolor classes at the community center downtown. It's funny, half my students are retirees, and the other half are young mothers trying to find something that's theirs again. I watch them paint and think, we're all trying to reclaim a piece of ourselves from someone else's expectations. One afternoon, a woman about my age, Linda, stayed after class. She said softly, "My son keeps asking for my house title to be in his name, just in case. I don't want to lose him, but I'm scared." I handed her a copy of a checklist I'd made months ago, 7 questions before you sign. She looked at it like it was a lifeline. "I didn't know I was allowed to slow down," she whispered. I smiled. "You're allowed to think before you give. Love isn't a contract. It's Pravalever." That night, I went home and opened the blue binder. It's thick now, almost bursting with papers, notes, letters. The section labels read like milestones: audit, capacity, legacy. But there's one tab I added recently: education. Inside, I've tucked printouts of the frameworks Ellen and I built together. Calm, collect, confirm, incident log essentials, 7 questions before you sign. She wants to publish them as a small guide for seniors and their families. Not a revenge project, just a resource. Ellen calls it turning pain into protocol. I call it dignity on paper. A few weeks ago, I got another letter from the twins, handwritten this time, each one in different colored ink. They're growing up fast, and their words feel older too. "Grandma, Mom says you're mad at her forever. But Dad told us you just needed space. We hope one day we can see you again." I sat with that letter for hours before replying. I told them, "There's no forever in anger, only distance in healing. I love you both, and when you're old enough to understand boundaries, you'll understand why they protect love, not destroy it." I didn't mention Brooke. Some stories have to rest until people are ready to read them. Ellen says Brooke's life has quieted down. They sold the house, moved into an apartment. No lawsuits, no more threats, just silence. I've stopped checking for updates. I don't need to monitor her chaos anymore to feel safe. That's how I know I've healed. Yesterday, as I was locking up after class, Linda handed me a tiny card she'd painted herself. On it, she'd written, "Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection." I laughed through tears because it sounded like something I might have said months ago when I was still learning to believe it. I drove home with the windows down, desert wind tangling my hair, the smell of rain just starting to rise. When I got there, I opened my binder one last time and added one more page at the end. It just said, "The boundary is not what I say to them, it's what I promise myself." I'm sad. That's my inheritance now, not money, not control, not guilt, just peace with proof. And maybe, someday, when the twins are grown and strong enough to set their own boundaries, they'll find that same peace because someone in this family finally drew a line and stayed on the right side of it. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. That's the truth Juliet learned the hard way, and maybe the one most of us need to hear. You can love people deeply and still say no without guilt, because love that erases you isn't love, it's dependency wearing your face. When she built her blue binder, Juliet wasn't just filing receipts, she was rebuilding her sense of worth, one documented truth at a time. It became her quiet declaration that peace isn't what others give you, it's what you notarize within yourself. Here's what we can all take from her story. Write your boundaries down. 3 sentences that begin with "I will" or "I will not." Say them out loud. Keep a small record. If conflict or confusion happens, jot down dates and facts. No drama, just truth. Pause before signing. If someone says, "It's urgent," stop and breathe. Urgency is often the disguise of manipulation. Use Juliet's 3C rule. Calm, collect, confirm. When emotions rise, turn to process instead of panic. This is not legal advice. Find your version of the blue binder. It might be a notebook, a locked note in your phone, or a folder called Clarity. Because at the end of the day, the boundary isn't what you say to them, it's what you promise yourself. If Juliet's story touched something in you, share one boundary you're ready to reclaim in the comments, or download the free 1-page checklist, 7 questions before you sign, linked below. And tonight, may you rest easy not because everyone finally understands you, but because you finally understand you.